let's get to the point. We're examined at the eve of our life on love. And one cannot too much separate the vertical from the horizontal. Why? The faculty that loves is the same, the will. And the will is the faculty that commands. So, if we love, we execute. And it is pure illusion to say, I love my brethren if I execute pain. Listen to this. Quite a few saints have had to do with sons of men having to do with them after their death, pleading for help, stuck. Well, it happened, for instance, to the one that gave us the devotion to the Sacred Heart as we know it, Margaret Mary. She had an extraordinary experience one day, and she writes it herself. As I was before the Blessed Sacrament, on its feast day, a person utterly on fire suddenly presented himself before me. The pitiful state in which he let me see that he was in purgatory made me shed great tears. He told me that he was the soul of the Benedictine father who had once heard my confession and told me to receive Holy Communion, in thanks for which God had allowed him to address himself to me, to give him some relief from his pains. He asked me for all that I might do or suffer during the 3 months to follow. When I had promised him this, after asking my superior's permission, he told me that the first reason for his great sufferings was the preference he had given to his own interest over the glory of God. Now here we have something to do with loving God with all our heart. God has all the rights. And that, by the way, is the justification for the purely gratuitous life of a victim soul, of an enclosed monk or nun who does nothing but praise. God has his rights to call out for himself, as he has the right to create certain angels who have nothing to do in heaven but praise. Secondly, after explaining that the problem was there, it was out of excessive attachment to his reputation, which, by the way, shows that we're serving ourselves in serving God if we're not careful. Attention-seeking. The second was his lack of charity towards his brethren. Now, someone here might think that he or she is excluded from this. I've got news for you. No one is. Remember that passage in the experience of Catalina coming to church at the last moment, and Our Lady gave her to understand, when it came to the examination of conscience, that she had not been very charitable on the way here. One can be rude to one's brethren on the road. The third, the excessive affection he had had for creatures. Now, creature, these are anything that's come from the Creator's hand. We can be attached to something beneath God, and that will come back to us in purgatory. We must be free to fly. I make a jump. In fairly recent times, we have the canonization of a great modern saint, Miriam, or Mariam, Marie de Jésus crucifié, the stigmatized Carmelite nun, who was only 32 when she died. She had all the gifts. And she knew what happened to souls when they died, quite often. There was an apparently holy Mother Superior of theirs in the congregation, Carmelites, who was having a rough time. Apparently it was because she was using the resources of the community as though she owned them. Whereas, notice this bit, a hidden, obscure nun who was never superior and made no noise upon earth was never noticed by anyone inside or outside the convent, who went like a rocket. Nyaa! Where did she go so quickly? Apparently, not once in her religious life had she been lacking in charity. That's not noticeable, that's not spectacular, but it's the real thing. And Thérèse of Lisieux knew it. Do you remember? She was in choir for hours and kept on hearing fidgeting noises for hours on end, the nun next to her with her rosary or whatever she might find to fidget with. All she could do in the end was offer up this music as a prayer in itself. And that same nun was convinced that this Thérèse was her best friend and that she herself was Thérèse's favourite. In fact, she wrote after her death an essay, Memories of a Treasured Friendship, until one day she asked the chaplain of the monastery, but who was that nun who had the gift of displeasing her in everything? Ma sœur, said the chaplain, c'était vous. Hollywood. The act was kept perfectly. I remember in school days wanting, if I could, to go to the conventual mass of the brethren in our parish, because there were 6 or 7 monks there, and one preached at it with some eloquence each day. Do you know what he did? He would take just something he had happened to notice anywhere and make out of it a sermon. One day he preached on this. Can you see it? It's the Colgate Ring of Confidence, which some of you of a certain vintage may remember. And he explained how we are all called to live the Colgate Ring of Confidence. It's not so simple when, either at home or in community, we're feeling like Thérèse, interiorly cheesed off by irritation and keeping up the act. Smiling is very difficult when one doesn't feel like it. A while back, I was writing to an enclosed nun, fairly young, and I did what I often do, made my point with a cartoon, just the aquarium, full of fish, each with the Colgate Ring of Confidence. Big smiles, big teeth from ear to ear, and bubbles coming out of each one. Shalom, shalom. And then underneath, simultaneous translation service. Go and boil your head in mustard, dear sister. It's not so simple until death, keeping up the Colgate Ring of Confidence. I continue. The question came out also in the Purgatory manuscript. Apparently, this is the big one. And even people who might deserve a thorough roasting on the other side can sometimes get a sudden reduction because of this. A few hints from Purgatory. Don't do anything to make yourself noticed exteriorly. Now, don't think that might not be your case. There are several ways of getting attention. One can be wanting attention because one is not well, because one is being badly treated. One can want attention by talking a lot, making sure that the whole conversation follows us. One can want attention by accidentally putting in some glorious point about what we've done. It can happen also in a monastery. Anything which draws attention is a thorough nuisance. Just disappearing and doing everything as everyone else is genuine sanctity. And this one too is close, hot on its heels, and might concern each one of us if we're honest. Avoid the company without offending charity, notice, of those sisters who are too extrovert. That comes through also in the communications we find in the diary of St. Faustina. The Lord taught her that she had to be recollected, and also directly taught her not to drift towards sisters who were very extrovert, because they were not at peace with themselves, and it rubbed off on her. Another saint, actually I'm not sure if she's yet beatified, but she's recognized to be what she is, a great mystic in the 1930s. Sister Consolata Petrone, who was a Carmelite adoration sister, rather a Capuchin, and she was taught by the Lord that there was one thing that he could not tolerate in her soul. Do you know what it was? It was agitation. He gave her a spirituality of perpetual calm. Why? It was that alone that allowed him to get through to her. And he explained to her that the agitated soul is like a pond that one messes up with a stick and the mud comes up. She wanted her to be crystal clear without any waves. Go through your day in calm mode, and therefore you have to avoid what is coming at you, which is not calm. You can't be all the time exposed to noisy screens, noisy music, and yes, noisy people. And those of you who are thinking of marrying, choose a calm specimen with which to spend your life. Otherwise you're condemned to someone else's poison. Because poison it is, fumes, bad vibes. You can't be at peace because there's unpeace too close to you. And he goes on, or rather the sister in purgatory goes on. Those who are too extrovert, who lack precisely charity. To invade someone else's space is to lack charity. Allow people to be themselves. You, for your part, just be occupied, this is a secret, with your own business. The term busybody says it all, doesn't it? We make everyone else's business our problem. We're only here once, my friends. Let's limit the damage of our state. Mind your own business. It applies also to the church. The church will go on after we have died. Efface yourself. Remember Jean-Marie Vianney? He didn't want to appear on any photograph. And the comment was, tant aimait-il s'effacer, so much did he love to efface himself. Padre Pio too refused miraculously to appear until he was commanded to appear on the photos that people were taking of him. Efface yourself, therefore, in conversation means putting an embargo on the word I and me. Never, listen to this, never express your feeling unless you're forced to. Some people pontificate on every subject that comes up. They know a lot, don't they? Concentrate your attention on the one sole object which should be the motive force of your whole life. Jesus. Yes, Jesus, from morning to evening and from evening to morning, which comes back precisely to the vertical. We're only here once, my friends. Loving God with all our heart means, in practice, all our faculties, and therefore our time too. Otherwise, we're our own worst enemy. We're wasting our time doing things that no one ever asked us to do. Let's keep it simple, like John the Evangelist, at the age of 90, was asked for a word each Sunday. Father, give us a word. And the old man would get up and say, little children, love one another, and then sit down again. After weeks of this, they asked him, Reverend Father, why do you always say the same thing? The Master commanded only this, and if it were but done, it would be.